Enjoy the show! Hey, my name's John, and have you ever wanted to play the old Metro games but thought to yourself, man, I really wish I could play this as a cat? But no, not a figurative cat, but literally, as an actual cat, with the same charming stereotypes, just catching mice and meowing at dogs. Well, that's what I pleasantly discovered just a few days ago. As I was browsing through some of the lesser-known Metrovania games, I came across something that had piqued my interest, a quirky title called Gato Roboto, Spanish for cat, and Roboto for, well, robot. A short black and white retro Metrovania that looked quite different from all the more modern Hollow Knight clones today. And at a price of $2 on Steam, how could I say no to that? Charmed by its aesthetics and the quirkiness that it offers, I wanted to give this game a try in hopes that it'll offer something new to a genre that seems so diluted of games. But what I found was a game that, while so charming, never really pushed beyond what is already established, delivering a nice blend of that classic retro feel you know and love, along with the same gameplay formula that you've honestly at this point probably got tired of. Still though, I think for a bite-sized game, there's a lot to cover, and it's a game that highlights the genre as a whole. So let's dive deeper and explore all that this game has to offer. This is my experience with Gato Roboto. Developed by Doinksoft and published by who else but Devolver, Gato Roboto is a indie Metrovania style game featuring monochrome pixel art graphics, with you playing, and I kid you not, a cat named Kiki. The story starts out with your spaceship crashing on a mysterious planet, stranding both you and your owner Gary. Unfortunately, Gary is trapped, to say the least, and the first idea that comes out of his mind is to send his cat out to fix everything. The game is split between your two main forms, your mech form where you can move, jump and shoot your way across everything you see, and your cat form where you have to dodge and climb your way out of tight spaces to avoid enemies. All while in a typical platformer style gameplay where you solve puzzles, defeat enemies, and find upgrades as you navigate your way across the map. Aside from the cat part, it all sounds pretty normal, and honestly that's because it is. It's by design very reminiscent of the games that inspired it, and that's notably Metroid. But you get the idea. And for me, it's part of the reason why I even tried it out in the first place. I know, it's shallow, but it's why I came, but thankfully not the reason why I stayed. And judging by some of the reviews left by other people, I was far from the only person that felt the same way. And while I thought that the game's humor and writing style was a bit over the top at the start, it grew on me faster than I could finish the game in. And for me, this is what hooked me into playing from the very start. There's a lot of good parts about Gato Roboto, but for me, I really wanted to highlight two things that I think this game does really well. One is its aesthetic and the absurdity of its dialogue, and the other is just how cheap and accessible this game is. I know it's a bit weird to say that above all else, the strongest parts of a Metrovania is its dialogue, but to be frank, after playing through what I think honestly are some very forgettable and generic segments, the quirkiness and just the general atmosphere of the dialogue feels great. Mind you, I know it's not for everyone. Dialogue is, after all, one of the most subjective parts of any game, along with the story. Think of all the movies, shows, and other games you've played. Chances are you have a totally different taste compared to me, your friends, and probably even your past self. I do. And I think this game does a good job in catering to the type of audience it's expecting, and knows from the get-go that, yeah, it's pretty stupid, and that's our strength, so let's play that to our advantage. It's a story about a cat in a giant mech suit. What's so serious about that? Right from the get-go, and not even 2 minutes out, you can just see how serious this game takes itself. You, the cat, can only meow throughout the game. And during the intro exposition, even your owner Gary is in shock that not only is he talking to a cat, but also he has to rely on him to get himself out of the mess that he created. And honestly, that's just the start. You'll quickly come to meet a talking frog along with your arch nemesis throughout the game, a talking rat who's trying to save his beloved dog. It's quirky, it's self-aware, and for me, it's a breath of fresh air from all the more serious games in this genre. I think I speak for a lot of people when I say the somber, serious titles that have become staples can feel too similar to each other at times, and sometimes I just want a quick and cheap laugh. I think this plays pretty well into the other thing that Gato Roboto does really well, and that's being accessible. Sure, it's easy to say why. After all, not only is it bite-sized, but it's also really cheap on Steam. I got it for $2 during the Steam Summer Sale, and even by indie game standards, it's easily one of the better value games out there. But I think the part about this game being accessible isn't the cost or the specs, but rather just how easy it is to get into this game. It's surprisingly straightforward, and actually linear for the most part, and is rather a mild game in terms of difficulty. It's not too long, and it uses the playtime well for beginners. If you're someone that has a friend that is either on the fence or has failed and tried to play other games in this genre, honestly, it's a good title for them to start off with. A fairly standard game with some great dialogue that at the end of the day remains fun for a lot of people. I think it's fair to say that while this game is fun, it's far from perfect. And I think most of it comes from a lack of innovation and mainly just some of the shallow gameplay mechanics. The thing I felt while playing this game was that it was extremely fun at the start of the game, but as I played more and more, it not only felt a bit overly repetitive, but also bland. And by the time you're on the last section, you're often feeling very bored of the same repetitive rooms you've likely seen over and over again. During my playthrough of this game, I didn't manage to find all of the health upgrades, but despite this, the final section felt like a cakewalk with me being a bullet sponge. Since the enemy variety in this game isn't that high, it often means you're seeing the same game mobs that you see at the start of the game with no changes at all. Still though, the portions of this game in the mech suit were still fun to play, but the other half of the game in the cap portion and using the other suits becomes nothing more than a gimmick past the first few times you do it. Particularly because of just how stale the level design is for those sections, and the fact that you have no upgrades dedicated to those parts. It can feel like it's the same thing throughout the entire game. And combine this with the one-shot mechanic during the cap form and the often really icy controls that this game has, it can lead to so many headaches where it feels like all of a sudden I'm playing a completely different game. Small complaints, yes, as those sections don't make up the majority of the game, but to me still, it sours what is otherwise a pretty solid title. For a game so short, it left quite an impression on me, for both the game itself and the generic formula that each game is trying to follow in this genre, all while trying to innovate and recapture the same lightning in a bottle that games like Super Metroid and Hollow Knight came out with. A charmingly quirky game that I think at the end of the day is both fun and accessible. I think there's a lot that this game does right, and it's a good example of a bite-sized game to ease people into some of the bigger titles. Metroidvanias in the recent years have pushed to become harder, more complex, and harder to get into as the genre gets more and more fleshed out. And for casual players, this can often leave them with a feeling of being left out at times. So, am I going to recommend this game to everybody? Probably not. But for those that want a taste of the past or are trying to push themselves into trying these type of games, it's a great and short lovable title that you won't regret trying, with a great core game, fun dialogue, and a great aesthetic to go with it. So, as always, thanks for watching, until next time.